Welcome to MetaPod, the podcast where we discuss operational execs and organizations that make and move stuff, and our common headaches, digital transformation, the forever labor shortage, and doing more with less. And now, the host of MetaPod, Ron Crabtree.
Okay, so it's Ron Crabtree, and I'm back here with this next episode of MetaPod, where we really talk about those three common challenges organizations face, particularly those involved with tangible goods. You know, the forever labor shortage, the challenge to digitize, digital transformation, and this do more with less. And I can't think of an organization that's, more recognizable in the medical devices space as Medtronic. And we have Dr. Michael O'Connor with us here, and he's going to be introducing himself in a moment. And medical devices industry, life sciences at all is, a growth industry. It has been a growth industry. It will continue to be a growth industry. And we think about those kinds of challenges. They certainly are facing them as more so than perhaps other industries might. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from Michael. He's going to introduce himself in a second. We'll start out with a little bit of a diagnosis, kind of like three different areas, medical device industry kind of specific, but it kind of overlaps with most industries. And then what do you do about those three key diagnostics that he's going to provide? So with that, Michael, tell us a little bit about you and Medtronic.
Yeah, thank you, Ron. Thanks for having me here. So my name is Michael O'Connor. I am the Senior Research Program Director at Medtronic. I've been there 22 years. I've worked in corporate functions. I've worked in what we call cardiac rhythm management, neuromodulation. Currently, I'm in enabling technologies, which is in the cranial and spinal technology group. And my latest project was working with a spine robot over the last 2.5 years in Israel. So really exciting. I have a PhD in civil engineering from the University of Maryland, majoring in project management, and then I have master's degrees from the host organization or universities. So I reside out of the Twin Cities of Minnesota, and I've been a remote worker for the last 4+ years and enjoy it quite a bit, but I can go in the office. It's very close to where I work. And I'm part of a lot of different professional societies like the AMBI, the BMSC, SME, Society of Manufacturing Engineers, Project Management Institute. So I stay quite busy there. I'm on a number of advisory boards, and I teach at multiple universities. So I like to learn, and I believe teaching is learning because not everyone knows everything. You learn a lot from your students. So I teach, and I'm actually teaching a few courses right now, one in strategic engineering management, and I teach a capstone course for an entire year with a group of mechanical, electrical, and computer engineering students too. So I stay quite busy. But thanks for having me.
All right. So Medtronic's, I think, the number one player in the med device space, right?
Correct. Yeah, they're the largest medical device company with roughly around 95,000 people in about 170 countries, and manufacturing all over the world.
Yeah, Michael and I have had a lot of great conversations over the years on various topics, and every time I talk with Michael, I come away smarter. And when I think about people that I would turn to for what's going on with innovation, developing new products and services, digitization, et cetera. He's had the benefit of some visibility across all of those businesses to some degree over the years. So Michael's definitely on my speed dial when I want to know more about that. So with that, I want to get started then. Take us through some diagnostics here, and I might interrupt with a couple of questions, ask for some definitions as we go. But what would be that first area, probably any business, but particularly in the medical device space, you should be looking at, concerned about?
Yeah, thanks, Ron. So I would say the first thing that I have on my mind and I see on a day-to-day basis that's creating a lot of momentum is cybersecurity. So cybersecurity, I think we see it in our daily lives, but of course in our work lives, it's very important. And there's vulnerabilities in medical devices and software applications and healthcare systems. And of course we know technology, AI, everything's going really fast. And sometimes the cybersecurity regulations and standards don't catch up as fast. So it's an area that we work closely with, regulators like the FDA and notified bodies and whatnot. But, it is an area that we need to stay focused on. We need to stay vigilant in how we do it and how we roll it out, right? It's bigger than just our personal social security numbers and those kind of things. This has an effect on most devices because most devices are smarter now. They have technology embedded into them. And when I think of medical devices, I don't think of just it's just a widget. It's a smart widget. And so cybersecurity is a big deal. And I'm looking at some research here that research discovered 993 vulnerabilities within 966 medical device products and devices, revealing a 59% increase from 2022. That's a little bit dated information, but it shows you that it's really important. And coupled with the rise of frequency of cyber attacks, industry, patients continue to be deeply concerned about these things, and it's something that we have to stay on top of all the time. And I can say this because I've been working more with software processes and software at Medtronic. And again, I don't want to say it's a newer area, but it's an area that still has a lot of growth to take place. So it's an area that I think is important, and it's an area that we need to stay, close to.
Yeah, with the pressure to digitize, right, adopt things like artificial intelligence and what have you. I'm hearing interesting things out there that may or may not be true in your view, that the devices and as a backdoor for somebody to come in and steal information about patients, privacy information, et cetera. That's got to be a huge concern. And then there's probably layers to that where you've got your tier one suppliers, and then they have suppliers, and they have suppliers who may be involved with that custody of ownership for development of the technology. You guys dig into that as well?
Yeah, correct. I mean, if I look at the robot that I worked on most recently, it's a spine robot, right? So it has hardware, software, it has manufacturers, many suppliers. We have to figure out how we need to keep that secure through all the things that we do. Like you said, it's the suppliers and things that go back. It's the manufacturing site. It's the product, and we get it out there. We get it into the hospitals. It's even the thing as electricity or dirty electricity there too. Those kind of things you don't even think of. Their Wi-Fi setup, their cabling systems. It is very complex, and it's something that you need to have good systems engineering to be able to make sure that you are set up the right way. But even once you think you're okay, you know, things change. And that's the thing. It's in a changing environment, and you have to be adapting and be flexible to all those changing things, even standards and requirements. It's just constantly changing.
So imagining the governance around that, it has to be pretty stringent because you're a highly regulated industry, you know, the FDA requirements, et cetera. So, you know, I'll call it rogue spend and people going out buying their own software and on their own. I bet you guys have to be pretty darn rigorous around who's doing what and why, particularly as it relates to products and vulnerabilities.
Yeah, no, we do. And I think we look to, you know, the latest standards, work closely with what FDA is putting out there. We have what's called notified bodies in Europe and other places, those regulators. You constantly have to be working with them and seeing what new things are coming out, because I think it's like AI is moving faster than the standards. You know, self-driving cars are moving faster than the standards. I think it's the same thing here in the software and cybersecurity. Things are moving faster than the standards might be in place. So we have to sometimes take a pause, see what standards are there, or work with the regulators to create it. I mean, Medtronic has been really good in being the first in a lot of things. And sometimes it means we have to be the first to help them create standards or protocols that work for us and the patients. Ultimately, we want the patient to have the right product, to have a safe product. So all these things play into, you know, cybersecurity.
Perfect. So we're going to circle back and talk about what to do if you determine, yes, in fact, and it's something we should be concerned about. We're going to circle back to what do you do to deal with it, right? Let's move on to the next diagnostic.
So the next diagnostic I have is supply chain challenges. And I think we all see it, you know, just even the recent hurricane, right? That's got supply chain challenges with, I think, IV beads in North Carolina. I had no idea, right? And that plant flooded. It could be down for a while, right? So what do you do? How do you have contingencies there? But we've been battling this at Medtronic, and other companies have been battling this for years, right? Ever since probably before the pandemic, but then the pandemic exposed things. And even post-pandemic with natural disasters and whatnot, we're still having issues, right? So I think, you know, material shortages, tight capacity, customers, you know, that meet things at certain times. And many of the OEMs that we work with have built up inventory, and we have risk mitigation strategies, but we still find ourselves with either excess inventory or low inventory or the wrong inventory. But we need to figure out how to keep that in front of us and keep making that work. You know, it does cause financial strain for us at times, but I think, you know, we brought on a new chief operating officer before the pandemic from Walmart, and I kind of scratched my head, but now I know why. You know, we needed to do things in a different way, in a more efficient way. And Medtronic had purchased Covidien in 2015, we went from 42,000 employees to over 90,000 employees. So you can imagine what that did to our supplier list. So we've been chipping away at a lot of those things over time, but I think things are moving in a really good direction. But we have the same issues that a lot of companies have. Like I said, natural disasters, too much of something, not enough of others. What's the backup plan? We order things in buckets, not train cars. How do you work with those type of things? So it's very complex, but I do think we've got some good strategies and good things that we're working with now.
Okay. Basically, it's uncovering where you have exposure, right, in the supply chain network, working down through, where are we out of whack in the inventories and why are we out of whack? Do we have data and information about how it got that way? Because, can't fix something you don't understand why it is the way it is. I imagine you're working through all that is what you're recommending. You've got to really make sure you've got visibility to what's driving those indicators. So
exactly. And as you can imagine, and everyone knows, it's very complex, right? Just when you think you had it, a hurricane hits the southeast part of the nation. And, I don't know what the implications are, but I'm sure there are implications and we have to pivot. One of the other things that had happened over the past some years is Puerto Rico back in the day, I don't know, 3-4 years ago, they had a hurricane. We have 5 manufacturing sites there. So we had to do a lot to get things back up and running. And even when that was back up and running, they didn't have the infrastructure for the employees. They didn't have a place to shower, to do laundry, to get gas. We had to put those things in place at the plants in Medtronic to help them out so they could come to work and be able to contribute to creating products. So yeah, you think you know what you know, but when something happens, hopefully your plan is in place to combat that.
Okay, awesome. And then what's been the third area you think organizations should really be looking at?
Yeah, so I would say the labor shortage, so the talent gap. The labor shortage for skilled and unskilled talent is still persisting in 2024. We have the virtual, hybrid, remote pressures, right? I see Amazon's trying to return to work and there's people that are pushing back. We've got a hybrid approach. It's tough, right? Post-pandemic, it's tough. But the pool of specialized talent in the medical device manufacturing industry has always been scarce, and we expect that to continue. There probably won't be enough skilled technicians to meet the future demand, including machinists, manufacturing supervisors, and programmers. I'm probably more concerned in the programmers, like we talked about cybersecurity and the AI type stuff, because I find with things like AI, you've got the Googles, the Yahoos, the Apples that are paying premium salaries. We have to compete with that. That's not always easy to compete with. So I think that's an area of talent that is going to persist for us into the future. We have to figure out ways to combat that.
All right, cool. Yeah, it's a common challenge. I hear it in every industry, but it's very acute in growth industries, certainly, like medical devices, for example. So what I'd like to do now is circle back and kind of give a little bit of your sage advice based on what you observed, learned, and gleaned. Let's pretend that the audience says, yep, I've got opportunities or threats around cybersecurity, supply chain, and then, of course, the forever labor shortage phenomena. Let's go back to each of those now. And I'm interested in, what do you do? And what are the tactical actions we should take to get out in front of those problems?
Yeah, so I would say in cybersecurity, organization needs a plan that outlines the requirements and the needs of the business. In other words, what's the most important to prioritize, stay up with to date on regulations and standards, and explore these and make sure they're incorporated into your overall strategy. That needs to be really important, and you need to disseminate that to all the people that are working with you, right? Because it is ever changing, and I think with that, you have to keep that iterative. It's not just a one and done. The next thing I would say is, you need to create a risk-based approach with mitigations and take some time to get a group of people that really know that and keep that kind of in a cadence of meetings and a cadence of, how it is we're going to do it and where we're going to keep it. I think with a lot of these things I'm talking about too, you need to find a place to keep things at an organization that people can find it, right? So we're an organization of 95,000 people. I want to make sure people can find that information if I'm not there tomorrow or other people have moved on, because we do have a swirl when we have such a large organization. So I think that's an important.
Yeah. And so without disclosing anything confidential, what are some of the tools and techniques you found successful to actually accomplish that?
Yeah. So I would say, using the Microsoft Office suite of tools and using a simple thing as a team site and having, the team site with the files there, but then making sure you work with your IT organization to make sure that those files are going to stay on for a period of time, or what are your requirements for that? It could be 6 months and it's gone. So we want to make sure that we have that. But that seems to be very collaborative. I think on the negative side with that, you get, people still use email. They use the team sites. They use shared sites. They use links. They use, text on your phones, your iPads. So it can get, at times, communication can be a little bit too much. So you need to figure out a good methodology and a culture of how you're going to do that. And most of the teams I work with do that. They figure it out. And I would say the younger generation is pretty savvy with that. It's maybe older generation like me that gets a little lost at times. But I would say the MS Teams has been a pretty good approach to collaborating and categorizing and getting your arms around these things and having a landing place that people, the one thing I like too is being a global company, 365, 24/7, people can work on these things at all hours of the day. You can come back and see what inputs and improvements they have done. You don't have to email it out and then one person takes all that information and puts it in one place. So there are advantages to it, but at times I feel a little overwhelmed that there's too many things coming at me too quickly.
All right. Thank you for sharing that. I'll let you continue.
Yeah, so I would say that lastly, it's to update and revisit these plans and make sure you have the most up-to-date information, actions, and dates. I think a lot of times with plans and cybersecurity or wherever it is, people do a great job of a point in time when they get that plan put together. But if you don't revisit and you don't have a cadence to updating it, it's just a plan and a point of time. And I see that time and time again in a lot of different things and projects. So you need someone that's going to revisit it, ask the difficult questions, push it a little bit, and keep the most pertinent information up to date. And that's not easy. People have a lot of competing items. There's a lot of things at our fingertips, so you're distracted by a lot of things. But you have to have someone that has that cadence and that vision and that leadership to keep those things moving, so that whatever there's a threat or a problem, the plan you put in place, the risk or mitigations, is the most up to date.
Yeah, that reminds me of the famous quote from, I think it's Sun Tzu, The Art of War. No plan survives contact with the enemy. So what's your robust, what happens, what do you do when there's issues? And the other thing I'm imagining, you can confirm or deny, is information has a shelf life. Things change very quickly. So our assumptions today about what we need to do can change very quickly. 30, 60, 90-day windows, things can change. I don't suppose that's a piece of the action here. And so how do you stay on top of that?
Yeah, and I think with cybersecurity in general, right, it's a daily thing, right? So again, I think it's having that plan in place. It's people knowing where that plan is, being able to get that information, but it's also working with, we have a partner in our IT organization that we work with, along with the, software developers, and it's a collaboration, but you can't take a vacation, so to say, or take a pause. You have to continually update and keep creating and keep poking holes at the plan, right? That's really the idea of having a cadence and having discussions, poking holes at the plan. Is this still right? Is this standard still viable? Did we hear something new? Has there been problems or other recalls or issues with other companies? It's like anything. It's a constant change. It's a constant update.
Awesome. Well, with that, let's move on to your recommendations around supply chain. Let's assume we have those challenges. What do we do?
Yeah, one of the first things I like to do is, review and minimize the amount of suppliers that we have. And I can say this because when we purchased Covidian, we more than doubled our suppliers. So we had to go back, and it took time. We had to go back and decide which suppliers are important, which suppliers can we take off the list. That's not easy, right? Because a lot of people have suppliers on there for different reasons. There's the MetaPod shops that maybe, supply only one product line or something, but you need to get under the hood and know what each of these things do. And you need to have that short, medium, and long-term plan. So I would say that's the first thing, is reviewing those suppliers, knowing why they're important, why they're not important, try to categorize them. That's a lot of work unto itself. And again, we have a lot, and rightly so, but we've done a good job of figuring that out. The next is making sure that you have that, what I call second source or backup. So just like we talked about natural disasters, what happens if you have an issue in California? Can you rely on a supplier on the East Coast or in Ireland or in Singapore or someplace? So having that backup is super important. And not only that, but having the validation of the information of that backup, the technical expertise, not just the name. You don't want to go there and then have to do all these things at one time. You want to have that work done prior, that it's seamless. You can just go in there and you can say, okay, now it's supplier X that's going to back up this other supplier that has an issue. I think that's a really big thing. And I think a lot of times that's underestimated. The supplier X has been doing this forever, never had a problem. But I think, it's clear what we've seen on the news recently. These natural disasters are happening and things happen that we just don't predict. We can't predict everything. So having that second source, I think, is really important. And that should start actually in the new product introduction, or NPI. That should start there. The supply operations people should make sure that those things are in place and those plans are in place there, so you don't have to punt once a product is brought out to the field.
Yeah, it's just curious whether part of the strategy is, after you identify those critical suppliers you're going to go with, is going a step further of helping them assess their cyber risk, going a step further, and what are they doing for future workforce development so they have people to actually make your stuff. Do you guys get involved with doing that sort of thing as well?
Yeah, I'm not as close to that, but we do that. We have procedures and things in place. We have training for suppliers, I believe, and we do a good job of partnering with them, because different suppliers are at different levels, right? Again, you have the mom and pop shop all the way up to the big organizations that have supply by the train car. So we do, and we have methodologies for that, and I think they do a good job of doing that, and I think they've come a long ways, and they're continually improving that. But definitely we want to bring them along. We want to bring them along with the tools that we use, the processes that we use. We do something called design for reliability and manufacturability, which is, in my mind, Six Sigma, but it's also good engineering. So we show them those things. We do first-time quality training. I was actually in a supplier with the robot, and I was doing something else. And before I left, they pulled me at the last second and said, "Hey, you're the highest ranking person here. Come in and give us some thoughts on first-time quality." And there was about 38 engineers in there that I had to think about, what does it, mean to me, and had a nice conversation there. So first-time quality is very important. We want to do it right the first time, and we don't want to, have issues or problems or risks. So yeah, we have good plans, and as you would expect with a big company, that's how that helps us and helps our supplier too.
Yeah. Anything else on the supply chain side with advice?
Yeah. Again, I would say in the R&D NPI space that, you work closely with supply chain and you have good plans and initiatives and strategy in place. You also work with supply chain to see your BOM, your bill of materials. What are those materials? Are there any materials that we have to be worried about? Are there any materials that we're going to be phased out? What's the sterilization method? ETO's gotten a lot of negative press because of the residuals that it has, and they've shut down ETO and sterilizers. So what is your alternate sterilization plan? What's your packaging plan? Do you have a sustainability plan? A lot of different things to take under consideration, and it's not for the faint-hearted, but you need to think of these things early in a project so that when you get it out there, you don't have issues of too much packaging, the wrong sterilization, not a backup supplier. You've got materials that you validated, spent a lot of time on, that are going away or can't be in place anymore, right? We know forever chemicals and plastics and stuff are a big deal. So a lot to think about. So supply chain can really work closely with that MPI and create a really good plan early on. So as you get out to the market, because some of these medical devices can take 2, 3, 5 or more years, right? So you need to have that plan in place and not, again, be punting when you're commercializing something and doing the fire drill. It takes a lot of time, takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of planning. But those are just off the top of my head, some of the things that we need to be aware of and concerned about.
Yeah, for the benefit of the audience that may not be familiar with the topic, what I'm hearing a lot of is, as a practical matter, we use an 80-20 type approach, right? There's the 20% of the items going into this product. We're going to spend 80% of our time really managing those suppliers, those items, et cetera, because those are the ones that actually have the incumbent risk in a constrained supply source, or there's reasons why. And I'm imagining it's a practical matter. Any company has to say, okay, I can't paint everything with the same brush. Right. I've got to be very, very methodical and make quality decisions about where to spend time and money.
Yeah, and I think it's like any industry, anything right now, the pace of change is increasing, right? And there's so many things coming at us, just to take sterilization, for instance. That's a big deal for a company like ours because all our products are sterilized. When sterilizers go down and we can't get our products there or whatever the case is, right, we need to have alternatives. So those things have to be thought of years in advance, not the day out. And, people have done a great job doing that in other companies and whatnot. So it's really that planning and that strategy and that organization that you need to be aware of and constantly re-looking at to make sure you're ahead of the game and not behind the game.
Yeah, so forms of DFMEA are designed for design failure mode and effect analysis, or there's different flavors of that. So I'm imagining that's piece of the Six Sigma tool bag. So I'm guessing those are kind of woven in at some point.
Yeah, design FMEAs, product FMEAs, all those type of things. Again, I would say that's another thing where you do it in a point in time, but that's not good enough. You have to revisit at different phases of the new product introduction to make sure nothing's changed. Regulations haven't changed. Standards haven't changed. You learn new information. And I think a lot of times people could get complacent with that, but I think that has gotten better over the years. People tend to take that more realistically, and investigators and notified bodies want to see that work. So we know that people are going to look under the hood. So I think that's an area that has been excelled at over recent years.
All right, awesome. I was guessing that was the case. Anything else on supply chain?
No, I just think the only thing I'll say is the more I learn about it, the more I've dealt with it over my 34 years in med device. It's a very complex area. It's an area once you think you got it okay and you got a supplier set up, something changes, right? And I have a lot of good relationships with suppliers, and I keep those relationships even though I may not be using them, because down the road I may be back in the game and working with them. And yeah, it is complex. So it's not an easy area. And I think that's why we've seen the new supply chain issues. If it was easy, we'd be able to figure it out. But even like the dock workers strike, I know they're back now, but that was going to be a huge supply chain nightmare, right? And we're not set up for these things. The grid isn't set up. We're just, we're vulnerable. And I think people need to realize that and have plans in place the best they can to make sure that that's not a roadblock down the road.
All right, this has been awesome. Let's pivot to that third area around, I'll call it joint, the forever labor shortage problem. What do we go do to mitigate that, particularly in your space?
Yeah, so when looking at, new areas for production or labor, I think, now there needs to be a market analysis of the labor pool. We got to consider things for automation, help mitigate the shortages that is MedTech is experiencing by perhaps doing upskilling. So creating training for skills and not necessarily degrees. I think nowadays, people can get a good job without getting a degree. And I know at Medtronic, we're doing more skill training so people can get the skills they need without maybe having to get a degree. On the flip side, we also have done things with degree programs that you can do online and they're all paid for. You don't need to do a tuition reimbursement. So Medtronic, I just saw they were in LinkedIn. They've been a pioneer in this area where, hey, we're going to give you these X amount of universities, these X amount of degrees. You can pick and choose, and we're going to pay for it. You won't see a bill. And you just go, you get your degree, or you get your upskilling. We have different things for upskilling that you can take training and improve your skills, right? Whether it might be cybersecurity or supply chain. So I think there's a lot more things offered to people that we can improve the talent pool. But the net is things like machinists and other things. Those are hands-on training, and those are things that can be difficult. So you do have to look at that market and really decide, do we have the people there? Can we develop those people? And can our programs help develop those people? And again, lucky at Medtronic, we have a lot of different areas that have the scale and leverage of Medtronic to put these programs into place, which are really good programs.
All right. I'm going to have a question for you about public-private partnerships around workforce development. If it wasn't included, I'm going to ask you a question later. I'll let you continue.
Yeah. So the next thing I'd say is on the skilled labor side, many medical device companies are thinking of talent acquisition in new ways, including their recruiting methods and approaches, and focus on the reskilling and upskilling for retention and internal mobility. So I'll tell you, I teach at a local university, and they had a career fair, and I thought, I haven't been to a career fair for forever. I'm going to sign up and go to the career fair and be a member out there. And there were 120 companies out there, and a lot of these companies had really good programs for graduates, and they weren't all necessarily degree programs. Some of them were hands-on. We can train you to be a machinist. We can train you to do this. I was really surprised. It was a collection of a lot of different things that opened my mind up to what's really going on in the job market. And I had some really good conversations with, Caterpillar to Post Cereal to, Optum Health Company and Target. And they all have their own ways of doing things, but I think they're taking different slants and different approaches to attract talent, keep talent, and even train talent. So just because you have a degree doesn't mean training stops there, right? We all know a degree is a great thing. It gets you in the door, but nowadays you have to be a continual learner. Take AI, cybersecurity, you have to learn all the time, right? So I think that's another method that I thought was really good. And I was glad I went to that. I thought it was a really encouraging set of people and programs that they have put in place. And then the last thing I have here is, I see organizations innovating through the flexible work schedules and hybrid options. I think, the way forward to get talent is have these options, but also have leadership rotational programs. Medtronic does a really good job of that. The other thing is through our internship program, when we have internships, the idea is that we have jobs at the end. So we changed our strategy on that it's not just an internship and see you later, we'll see you at a competitor. It's, hey, here's an internship, you do well, and there's a job at the end. And in fact, one of my students in my capstone class did 3 internships at Medtronic, and she already has a job next year at Medtronic. She's already been told. Fantastic. She's done a great job, I'm sure, and she already has her job. So that is really good. And then leadership programs. At Medtronic, we have nomination-based programs, and we have programs that you can just do on your own virtually or through other means. Those are great things. 5 years ago, that wasn't really in place, and virtual wasn't really a reality. Pandemic forced us into that. And these nomination programs, I've been through them, or I've got to travel around the world with cohorts and whatnot. All great programs, but there's so many things at their fingertips. It's really good to see. And then the last item, and the one that I think is maybe not used as much, but it is used, is the mentor-mentee program. We need to create that and keep that going and keep that viable. We use a company called Mentor Scout at Medtronic that pair things up, but I have quite a few informal ones that I have, and I have a couple of formal ones that are through those leadership programs. And I'm amazed when I get done with, say, a half an hour meeting and people are like, I had no idea. You just gave me a lot of good stuff I need to go work on. And again, it's through experience and failures that you help the young people navigate their careers and navigate other possibilities that they may not even know of. So I think that mentor-mentee is really important. And I know a lot of people at Medtronic take that really important to get back to and help the young people navigate their careers.
Okay, great. Yeah, it reminds me, Alan Willett was just on one of my podcasts, and he was talking about the wisdom gap. And one of his key things was around a mentorship program and really making that part of the company culture to effectively move younger people into actual responsibility much earlier than we have traditionally. As us baby boomers retire out, there's a huge gap, and it's getting worse. So it's clear you guys are well aware of that.
We are. With that being said, I've been teaching this capstone class at the university for a number of years. It's in the engineering school, and it's a full year. It's both semesters. And I have to tell you, it's 4 to 5 students. They're seniors, and I am so blown away at how good they are at presentations, presenting themselves, how smart they are. I'm like, I was nowhere near that. And it's just amazing how technology has changed their lives and how much more information they have at their fingertips. But I'm highly encouraged as to, these college graduates going into the workforce. We're getting some really good talent and really smart talent and really energized, passionate talent, right? So I love teaching this course because it really helps me learn about how they're doing and what things they're bringing to the table. But I am highly encouraged of those type of programs and how well these students are doing.
Okay. So the other question I had is around, public-private partnerships, and there's a whole litany of those. And I'm just curious whether or not there's a corporate-driven initiative out of Medtronic, or it's really left to the local factories, the regions to deal with this. For example, there's a really cool story recently, an organization being funded by area manufacturers to actually teach German-style apprenticeship training for the skilled trades to African Americans in poor cities to help build a future work. They're making them aware of that as a future job and actually getting in their minds that this is a destination for these. Otherwise, there's not that many jobs for these folks, right? Because they're not taught what they need to know to be effective in the workforce. I was just curious if, public-private partnerships is something kind of big picture at Medtronic, or you really leave that more at a local level?
No, so I could tell you at Medtronic, we have a public-private partnership group. And when I was at corporate, I was a part of that, and they're doing a lot of great things. not necessarily exactly what you talked to, but from a medical device company, working with governments, working with different organizations, a lot of effort. And those people, a lot of those people are mainly in Washington, D.C., as you would expect. But we do have that. But I would say what you just talked about, what we do have is we have a lot of other initiatives that aren't under public-private partnership necessarily. Like we have something called First Robotics.
Okay.
Teams that we work with schools, and we have an annual event every year. Actually, we have one in November. I'll be there, and I have a booth under project program portfolio management. And these high school students will come through, and I'll tell them my thing, and I'll have a QR code that they can go to a site. And so we do things maybe not under that shingle so much, but we do things under, it's a group called the Knowledge Center, which is like our e-library training. They've been doing First Robotics, and actually our CEO has been involved before he was the CEO, and he spends time there, and our head of HR comes to these meetings. It's a big deal. And so I would say, as an example, First Robotics is a really good example where we're getting kids into the science, technology, engineering areas, and we're working with them, and we're hosting them, and we're giving back in different ways through mentorship, through events, through engineering access and whatnot. So it's been really exciting. And at Medtronic, of course, we want to build the STEM community. So we have other programs like that. But I would say First Robotics is the largest thing. And I'm lucky, some years ago before the pandemic, I've been able to meet Dean Kamen, who was the inventor of the Segway and one of the proponents for First Robotics. And I remember talking to him, and they had a cyclone. It was like this huge winter storm. And he said, "You're going to be at my house tomorrow." And we're like, "No, we got to fly back." And he's kind of looked at us like, "Someone better come." And a gal from California said she'd be there. And she was just blown away at his devotion to First Robotics and everything he's doing. Totally on board with that. And I think we've had him speak at Medtronic before, but he is kind of the person that started First Robotics. And I was amazed to meet him. And I think it's a great program, but we have a host of other programs too, as you would expect with a company of our size. So yes, I think it's alive and well, but not necessarily under that shingle, but we do have that shingle and does a lot of great things for Medtronic.
Awesome. Well, Michael, this has been fantastic. And as always, I come away smarter after talking with you, and I really appreciate that. And it's an immense topic. And, folks may want to get in touch with you, ask questions, pick your brain. Maybe they want to hire you. I don't know. How do people get in touch with you?
Sure, LinkedIn. So that's probably the easiest way. Otherwise, mgoconnor@comcast.net, and we can probably put that in the closing days. But you can put my LinkedIn profile and my email, and happy to talk to anybody that might want to have a further discussion on any of the topics, or if they want to hire me, well, it's great.
All right. And also, you can reach out to me, and I can help you get connected with Michael if you're having trouble tracking him down. So, Michael, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you for joining MetaPod. For requests on topics or to ask questions, you can connect with Ron Crabtree 3 ways: via email at metapod@metaexperts.com, via LinkedIn, or by calling him directly at 734-425-1455, extension 103. Lastly, if you love the show, please consider leaving a 5-star review on your favorite podcast app. We truly appreciate all your support.